Okay, class, where we are now, we're talking about white matter and gray matter. White matter and gray matter, and the types of neurons that we have. Okay, white matter, remember we talked about myelination. Myelin is a white glistening substance, very white glistening. So whenever there are areas in the central nervous system that have a lot of myelinated fibers clustered together. Now, they all don't have to be myelinated neurons, but the preponderance, the majority is, it will give a white glistening appearance to that area. That's what we call white matter. If there's no myelin, then you're looking at a cell membrane, and a cell membrane is basically a translucent gray substance appearance. So if you have a cluster of unmyelinated in an area, that's what we call gray matter, because you're looking straight at that area. Or if you have cell bodies, a cluster of cell bodies. So a cluster of cell bodies is also gray matter, because cell bodies and dendrites don't have myelin, do not have myelin. Okay. That's the difference between white matter and gray, which will really come up when we talk about the brain and the spinal cord. Okay? The three types on a structural classification of neurons is the multipolar, bipolar, and what we'll call the unipolar type on a structural classification. Okay? So when we look at it, this is the most common, which is a multipolar. Several dendrites, one axon. Now, I want you to always know this. There can never be more than one axon to come off the cell body. There can never be more than one axon to come off the cell body. So in a multipolar, it's not having a bunch of axons. It's having one axon and a bunch of dendrites. That's a multipolar. Okay? The bipolar type is where you have two poles. So the bipolar type is where you have two poles, a dendrite end and an axon end. Here's the cell body. Now, a lot of those are found like in the eye, the retina of the eye, bipolar neurons that you'll find. So the most common is this. Then the second would be this. Then this here also, well, actually, both of these are about equal almost, would be what we call the unipolar type. The unipolar type, or some will call the pseudo-unipolar, is basically where you had it's almost started out like this, and the two ends swung around and met. But here's the receptive end. So all of this is kind of acting like an axon in a way. And it kind of comes and goes up in there. So this is what we call the dorsal root ganglion. The area we'll talk about when we do the spinal cord that's where you'll find a lot of these unipolar, or some called pseudo-unipolar. Okay? So right here, you can see in this particular drawing down here, let's just blow that up a little bit. You can see trigger zone right here. That's and then the trigger zone is where you do the action potentials. Remember, you don't do action potentials back here. That's graded potentials. So if you can get a signal started here, then that's the trigger. So this is the axon. So the axon is where action potentials propagate. That's why with this one, if that's considered a whole axon, then they propagate that way. Okay? So that's what you have there. All right. So here again is you're looking at this in that same thought. Bipolar, unipolar, multipolar. Okay. Now, when it comes to functional of the neurons, sensory neurons bring the signal into the central nervous system. Remember, going towards a headquarters is called the afferent. So sensory is afferent. So if I say the afferent division, even if I don't say sensory, know it's sensory. If I say sensory, you know it's afferent. Motor is efferent. The central nervous system is sending a signal out. And we'll see that when we get into the central nervous system. So afferent coming in, motor goes out. Motor's efferent. Then we have interneurons. Interneurons communicate between the afferent and the efferent, between the afferent and the efferent, and they are totally within the central nervous system. So they shuttle the message to the right area. That's why they call them association neurons. So here would be motor neuron going out. Okay, here's a bipolar in the retina, and here's a sensory coming in. So sensory comes in like that, motor goes out, and here's this bipolar just to show you the eye. So you can look at that in my PowerPoint. Thank you.